Welcome to Sixth Row Center, your best seat in the house for a movie chat. I'm Heath. That's JD. Hello, JD.
Hey, everybody.
Again, we have old friend Rob with us. I think every time you're on, Rob, I'm going to add an extra old to your introduction. How are you today, Rob?
I'm feeling old, but no, I feel good. I feel good. I feel good. I'm here. I'm ready. I'm willing. And I think
And
able.
able.
Maybe.
I hope
I
so.
don't know. Ooh.
All right. Today, we're going to be talking about the 2010 science fiction action film Inception. Written and directed by Christopher Nolan, whose filmography includes a string of amazing movies like Memento, The Prestige, his Dark Knight trilogy, Interstellar, Dunkirk, Tenet, Oppenheimer, and the one that's coming out next, which I can't wait to see, The Odyssey. Of all of them that I've seen, and I've seen just about every film he's made, Inception is my favorite so far. It's about a thief who steals information by infiltrating his target's dreams. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Marion Cotillard, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Ken Watanabe, the former Ellen Page, now Elliot Page, Tom Hardy, Cillian Murphy, Tom Berenger, Dilip Rao, and Michael Caine. It was shot in a standard 2.39 widescreen aspect ratio, which is really cool. It looks great, but it's kind of strange since Christopher Nolan was experimenting with IMAX for his previous film, which was The Dark Knight. JD and I did an episode on The Dark Knight, and we talked about his IMAX use in that, which looked amazing. And then he chose not to use it at all for Inception. I actually watched a video of him talking about that, and he didn't want to have to use the huge IMAX cameras to shoot certain things, which it's sad because some of these scenes would have been just amazing on IMAX. Anyway, he didn't use it. Every single film he's made after that, he has done at least some of it in IMAX. The budget for Inception was $160 million, and it made $839 million at the box office, making it a huge financial success. While the majority of critics raved about the film, the general viewing public was a bit more restrained, giving it a generally favorable sort of review. I think a lot of people just didn't understand it. They just didn't get it. In fact, I was watching another video that was talking about Nolan originally offered the lead role to Brad Pitt, who couldn't make it because of scheduling conflicts. But then after that, the second choice was Will Smith, of all people. And Will Smith turned it down because he said he did not understand the script. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm glad he didn't, because DiCaprio was very good. Inception was nominated for 8 Academy Awards: Best Picture, Original Screenplay, Art Direction, and Original Score. And it won the awards for Best Cinematography, Sound Editing, Sound Mixing, and Visual Effects. How Christopher Nolan wasn't even nominated, let alone the winner for Best Director in this, is the 2,000,007th reason that the Academy Awards are completely meaningless. And since we're probably not going to talk about this during our discussion of the movie, I just want to mention that a very, very solid and good film called The King's Speech swept the Oscars that year. It was a very good movie. I liked it a lot. But of the 10 nominees that year, it was the 4th best movie. Inception was definitely the best. The Social Network, Black Swan, all movies that came out that year and were somehow beaten out by The King's Speech. A good movie, but not as good as these other movies. And I hope we also talk a little bit about the score by the legendary Hans Zimmer. It too should have won the Oscar over Trent Reznor's score for The Social Network, which was very good, and I'm a huge Trent Reznor fan, but it wasn't as good as Inception. Okay, enough about that. I saw Inception on opening weekend in a packed theater when I used to go out and do things like that. I don't really anymore. I think I saw it with Josh, our director friend who we've had on before, but I'm not 100% sure. And I love the movie so much that I went the next weekend and saw it with Barbie. And then I saw it a third time alone a few days later. I'm pretty sure it's the only movie I have ever seen 3 times in the movies at the theater. And I would say it's a movie that you definitely want to see on a big screen because it is got amazing world-class special effects. It's got a story that is very visual and very fantastical. Do you guys remember your first experience seeing Inception? If you do, tell us briefly about that. And then afterwards, give us a little overall what you thought of the movie. Talk about, we were going to rate story, acting, and directing. Let us know what you think about that. Why don't you start, Rob?
Beautifully shot. The whole movie, the whole thing, it just feels real. It's funny because you don't know what's real. The sound. I listened to it when I was rewatching it. I had headphones on, and it's just It's just you were right about the sound. It was the soundtrack. It's beautifully done. The editing
Mm.
was the thing. Okay, and everybody's performance. I'm in the high eight, probably a nine almost here for me, because I watched it since my first viewing. I watched it maybe three other times, and then I rewatched it again. You could watch it over and over. It's one of those movies. I'm still immersed the third or fourth time that I watched it. Just great movie overall.
What do you think, JD?
I do not recall the first time I saw it, but I absolutely love this film for many of the same reason as you guys. It's beautiful, but also the story and the kind of shtick of the dreaming is so clever. You can rewatch it three times in a row and come up with a different conclusion every time if you want to
Right.
play the movie. You can watch it, but you can also dive in and try and guess. So it's a really fun movie on that level. For years, I mean, I've had different theories on what's going on with Cobb. Is he dreaming? Is he not? What the hell is going on with this whole story? On story, I give it an 8. On acting, I give it a 9. And on directing, I give it a 10. It's way, way up there for me. Top 50 easily. I don't know. It might even be top 10 of all time movies. The only thing is, at the end of the day, maybe, right? Maybe. At the end, even though I absolutely love it and it's fun, the whole kind of dreamscape shtick is what's fun about it, and it's beautifully shot and everything. But the story at the end of the day is a guy who's a hired thief, getting to see his kids again after he got his wife to kill herself. Now I say it out loud, I might want to come up on story, right? Like I might even put the story at a 9 as well. But at first, the whole dreamscape thing is like a time travel story. Those appeal to me. I have fun with them. I absolutely love them. But it's a shtick. It's a gimmick that gives you so much umbrella that I have to dock it a little bit for using that. It's kind of like breaking the fourth wall and Ferris Bueller. Ferris Bueller's got to be a top 10 movie or top 20 for sure. But he used that shtick of breaking the fourth wall. They did it beautifully, but you got to dock him for using that. That's a little bit of a cheat. Same with time travel, same with Dreamscape, where it's like he didn't get out of the cockadoodie car, right? If you're in a dream movie, he can always get out of the car. So that's my point of view. What do you think, Heath?
I agree with both of you guys. This is one of the greatest movies ever. I have it in my top, I think, 35 somewhere. I'm not exactly sure where, but it's right up there. Greatest movie ever. I agree with you as far as story. Story gets a 9 to me. It's one of the great stories, and because of all that it encompasses with the dreaming and stuff. It's funny that you mentioned Dreamscape, which was an old 80s Dennis Quaid movie. I don't know if you guys either saw that. And I remember in the 80s thinking it was such an amazing movie. It's probably really cheesy at this point. The acting, while I love the acting, and we'll talk about this because I liked all of the actors in this. I love the actors, and I love the job that they do. And it's difficult to do that job because these are fantastical situations. How do you act authentic in a fantastical situation? Because nobody's been in these sorts of situations. So how do you know if an actor's being, true or whatever? I really liked all their performances. I didn't find any of them really great, or as far as moving, as far as there wasn't that much emotion in anything. It was more of an action story, and so you only have to do as much as an action story needs you to do. I gave the acting about a 7, which is great. A 7 in my rating system means great. And an 8 would mean elite, and a 9 is like greatest ever. And if you get to a 10, which, very, very few things I will rate a 10, that means it's perfect. The story, again, was a 9. The acting was a 7. The directing I loved. It is amazing. I gave it an 8. I think a lot of what was done visually would be considered by technical standards. I think the cinematography was amazing. It won the Oscar for Best Cinematography. As Rob mentioned, it won for the visual effects. It won for the sound effects. It won all the sound awards and stuff like that. And I think that's what really does it. The directing was great. Everything was framed well, and he moves things in the frame well and all. But I think it's overshadowed so much by the special effects that's what really gives the film its look. And again, obviously Christopher Nolan was doing these things, but as far as his direction, amazing, but not like perfect. I enjoyed his work on The Dark Knight better. Anyway, that's trying to be brief, but not really. We're going to start doing our scene-by-scene breakdown now. It's going to take a long time because this is a long movie, and there are really, really cool things to talk about. You guys ready to start?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go. First, we have a little prologue sequence where we meet Dom Cobb, who is Leonardo DiCaprio. He is washed up on a beach somewhere. He's looking over towards a little boy and a little girl playing in the sand off in the distance. An armed Japanese guard takes him to a pagoda-looking fortress on a mountaintop where an ancient-looking, wealthy Japanese guy examines the only objects that Dom has with him, a handgun and a top, a little metal top. The Japanese dude asks if Dom is there to kill him, but then he says he's seen this top once before in a half-forgotten dream. It was possessed by a man with very radical ideas. And then we jump to, well, we don't know exactly where we jump to, if we're going back in time, if we're going somewhere else, or what's going on, but we're at the same place. It's this big dining room, look kind of Japanese-looking palace, and Dom Cobb is still there, only now he's wearing a tuxedo, and he's having a discussion with a much younger-looking, wealthy Japanese guy. And I don't know if, I can't remember because it was such a long time ago that I saw this movie for the first time. Did you immediately recognize that that was the same guy, only younger? Or did you not put that together?
Yeah, I knew it was him, and I thought, is there some kind of time travel thing going on here? Because how is he old now? He's young, that kind of. And Leonardo hadn't aged.
I would say, to answer it on a macro level, for such a complex idea, they do a good job of setting it up very quickly.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm engaged in the story of when people are dreaming and when they're not, but I understood the concept of the movie very quickly.
So the old guy, who is now a young guy, this is Saito. He's played by Ken Watanabe. And we spoke about weapons the last time we did an episode, and how you're immediately thrown into this big mystery, the missing children and weapons. In this, it's what the hell's going on? There's this guy washed up on a beach, and there's this old guy, and he's got a gun, and now he's young, and they're talking, and he's like, what is going on? But you immediately, like JD says, you're not necessarily confused. You just really want to know what's going on, which is mark of great storytelling. And we find out immediately that we're going to be talking about our perception of reality. Our perception of time is going to be messed around with. And you also immediately know that you need to be looking out for all sorts of clues. There's the top that the guy has. It's obviously going to be important for some reason. There's the little children playing on the beach. I mean, where did they come from? What do they have to do with this? Again, I mentioned it with weapons. Zach Cregger is really good at doling out information to keep you curious, but not giving too much away. Christopher Nolan is just as good at this, probably even better. And in this movie, he really shows it. There are some great reveals in this movie. Do you either of you have a favorite Christopher Nolan movie?
Geez, I haven't seen Memento in forever. It would either be Inception or Memento.
Movie.
I was hanging out with a bunch of film nerds. And basically, the conversation then was he's the next Tarantino. Like, he came up with his own new shtick, told a story in such a clever way. And he's never stopped.
What about you, Rob? Do you have a favorite Christopher Nolan movie?
This and Dark Knight. For a rewatch, both of these. They're like neck and neck. Because depending on the mood, Dark Knight, I think it's the best comic book movie ever made. And then this Inception is just so rewatchable. And as time goes by, you see different things because you're a little bit older and you're like, okay, I didn't understand that before. And now I relate.
Cobb and his associate Arthur are in this dining room with Saito, a young Saito now. And his associate Arthur is Joseph Gordon-Levitt. For whatever reason, I always think of him as the little boy from Angels in the Outfield, although he's done so much since then. And I think Joseph Gordon-Levitt is a spectacular actor. Anyway, they're explaining to Saito the idea that people's deepest and most important secrets can be accessed by others through their dreams. It's called extraction. And Cobb, in this scene, is selling a defense against this. He says he's the world's greatest extractor, so he can teach people how to defend against it. But Saito is not sold. He walks off, and we see that there's this huge black tie party going on, and Cobb and Arthur go to join it. And this is where we get the first big reveal. As they're walking off, Cobb looks at his watch, and we see that the seconds start to speed up a lot faster. And then what we find out is that Arthur, Cobb, and Saito are all actually asleep in an apartment. We don't know where this apartment is, but it seems like there's a revolution going on outside because there's bombs going off and there's mobs in the street and there's people screaming. Now, the three sleepers are all connected by wires coming from this big suitcase, and they're all being monitored by a fourth guy, an associate named Nash, who's played by Lucas Haas. And I think it's really interesting that we see that Saito is sleeping in a bed, Arthur's on a love seat, but DiCaprio is on a chair and he's set way up high somewhere. Now, the ticking slows down again, and we're back in the dream. And I think it's really cool the way we're getting information again. We're learning about, one, that this is a dream, and two, we learn sort of how the dream works. Time slows down in the dream world. It's a lot longer time in the dream world than a short time in the real world. And another thing we notice is that the explosions and the rumbling that are from the real world, you actually see these things in the dream. Like the building is shaking and you hear this rumbling. It could be thunder, but we know that it's bleeding in from the real world. I think it's just really cool the way it's done. It's explained. It's explained in a way that isn't confusing. I don't think I was confused at all as I was getting all this information. It just seemed cool. Mm-hmm. And then we meet Mal, played by Marion Cotillard, and we have no idea who she is. Some lady just shows up, but she's talking with Cobb. They clearly have some sort of a past. Their conversation is cryptic. She says, I thought you might be missing me. And he replies, I do, but I don't trust you. And it's like, what is going on here? Now, again, we know that this is a dream, but we don't know all of the rules. Like, how do people just show up? We don't know. The only thing we know for a fact is that the three people who are sleeping in the apartment are all having a shared dream. We guess because they're all hooked up to the same machine. That's what I got out of it.
They're in a dream, they're sharing it. Something's going on. Of course, you don't know all the rules, like you said. I like Mal's character intruding and him trying to manage the intrusion. And the way he does it is he tries to fix her in one place where he thinks he can control her, and it just doesn't work. And then a little bit later, if you were to kind of rewind that in your head, you go, oh, he can't control her. I thought that was well done.
I was instantly engaged. That's the appeal of these movies. I'm drawn in. Just like you said, I understand what's going on, and now I'm curious about the rules. Mm-hmm. And I'm already thinking, well, were we dreaming to begin with? Like, I'm playing the game already.
So Mal asks if the children miss her. So we're like, okay, husband and wife, but she left them. Why would they miss her? We don't know. All sorts of cryptic stuff going on between the two of them. So just like Rob said, Cobb makes Mal sit in a chair and ties a rope to the leg of the chair and then jumps out the window. So like she has to stay there or he's going to fall out the window to his death hundreds of feet down into a rocky shoreline. And she immediately gets up. It doesn't care. And the chair goes flying and he goes flying, but it's stopped by the balcony. You wonder, does she not care if he dies? Did she know that the balcony would stop the chair, that he wouldn't die? Does she know that it's a dream, that this whole thing's a dream? And if you die, I don't know what happens. Do you just wake up? You don't know yet. Dom finds a lower window. That's what he was looking for. And he breaks in, and with a gun, he starts shooting people and making his way back to that conference room, the big table where he had the meeting with Saito. And he gets in there and finds a safe, opens the safe, and steals what's in there, which is a manila envelope. But he is surprised because Saito walks in just then with Mal, and two of Saito's guards have Arthur. Mal gets Cobb to drop his gun by pointing her gun, not at him, but at Arthur. Saito explains that not only does he know that Cobb is there to steal from him, but he also knows that they're dreaming. And he wants to know who hired Cobb. I actually want to jump in here for 1 second. Saito knows he's dreaming. Obviously, Leonardo DiCaprio, Cobb and Arthur, they know they're dreaming. Have you guys ever experienced lucid dreaming?
Oh, yeah. It's so cool. It's one of my favorite things. I just know, for me, that when I start, there's a ticking that goes on. I only have so long until I wake up because I realize too much what's happening. I'm going to hold on to this as long as I can. And that's what I try to hold on to it. And it just never seems to be long enough. So at some point, I go, oh, I'm dreaming. I say, oh, it's not going to last. And then I do whatever I think I can do in that time. And then I wake up. Yeah, that's the
Do,
lucid
do, you, do
dreaming.
you immediately go like, oh, I have control. I can do stuff. Do you,
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah, I want to
yeah,
fly. First thing I want to try to
yeah,
do is fly. And I can't,
yeah.
it's hard. It's hard to keep flight. I try it and I crash and I do run really fast though. I can run incredibly fast, in my dreams, but I can't stay up. It's just interesting. It's really interesting. Good question. About you,
Yeah.
JD?
Oh yes, way back like when we were in high school, I actually worked on it to
Oh, wow.
try to be able to do it, and I've done it several times with the exact same story where the first thing I want to do is fly. As soon as I realize that I'm dreaming, and 9 times out of 10, I just float up. I don't fly up. Again, I'm already playing the movie at that point. By the time Saito is revealed as knowing that he's dreaming and they're all dreaming together, I loved it, right? Like it didn't throw me at all. I'm running right along with the story and thinking, oh, how clever, right? Like already we have not just a reveal, but a twist. The mark is not a mark. We're being introduced to the concept of personal defense, of being
Right.
trained to recognize when you're being extracted. I get how some people thought it was just too complex. They didn't quite follow because we're already like 3 layers in. Who's doing what's going on, and what are the rules? How does this work? And how do I know that we're not already 2 layers in? I am the target market. I love those kind of stories.
Cobb says that Maul can't threaten him by shooting Arthur because if she shoots Arthur, he's just going to wake up. And she says, no, if I don't shoot to kill, then he's going to be in a lot of pain. And she immediately shoots him in the kneecap, and he starts screaming in pain. And she moves over to shoot him in the other kneecap. So Cobb jumps onto the table, grabbing his gun, which was laying there, slides across the table. It's very cinematic, shoots Arthur right in the head, and he immediately wakes up in the apartment. Nash is there, and he's like, you're up too soon. But Arthur explains that the dream is collapsing. They need to keep Saito under, keep him asleep longer so that Cobb can finish his mission. And the way that he finishes his mission, so he needs this manila envelope that he stole, which he didn't get to steal because Saito walked in on him. But if he does, he needs to open it up and read it because if he wakes up, he loses it. It's gone. So he's running, and the dream is indeed collapsing. The building is just crumbling all over him. Guards are shooting at him. He's just trying to make his way to a safe spot, which he does, and then he opens up the stolen envelope because we realize he replaced the original one with a duplicate. He has the original one. He did steal it. Saito realizes this as well because he opens up the one with blank papers in it. So he knows that Cobb has stolen from him. It's a really great action sequence. It's really intense running. But the greatest thing about it is the background score. It's very prominent. I love the Inception score, the entire score, all of it. There's a lot of really great pieces. But the one from this particular scene is my absolute favorite. It's called The Dream is Collapsing. I remember after I watched the movie for the first time, I immediately got a copy of the soundtrack because it was that great that it stuck with me after the movie. And this particular piece was the one that I just played over and over on repeat. I really loved it. There are a lot of great pieces from scores, Ennio Morricone and the stuff from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly and The Ecstasy of the Gold and, John Williams stuff, Star Wars and Indiana Jones and Wendy Carlos from either Clockwork or The Shining or whatever. I would put The Dream is Collapsing against any of those. It's one of my all-time favorite score pieces. Do you guys? I know Rob loves scores. Do either of you have like a favorite score or something, a piece that you just can't get out of your mind?
Not really. I bought some soundtracks and even a score or two, but nothing that I carry with me like that.
So I have an obscure one, well, that's not obscure to Heath probably, but Cloud Atlas, the
Yeah.
soundtrack, so good. That's one of my likes in my library. It comes up once in a while. It's the weirdest one because it just pops up and it's just an instrumental, but it's so good.
Cobb sees that the papers he stole are heavily redacted, and Saito at the same time is waking up. Arthur tells Nash to go wake Cobb immediately, but Cobb is too deep under his sedation, so we discover what the high chair is for. Nash tips him over so that he falls into this big bathtub full of water. And for a second, it's all in slow motion. It's done really well. For a second, we see Cobb in the dream palace, in the dream, and suddenly just water flooding in from everywhere, from all angles, and then Cobb wakes up in the tub. This is something, we talked about the directing. I talked about the special effects and stuff. It was all shot in slow motion, and it just looks amazing. It's one of those scenes that you really want to see on a big screen. This is Christopher Nolan doing his thing in directing.
And I thought, there goes a budget. They flooded an entire set. How many rainmaking equipment did they hook up in that set? Because it looks like practical effects to me.
Yeah, I don't know if there was any real CGI going on in this movie. Everything looked pretty real.
Yeah.
Oh no, famous for its practical effects, especially the hotel fight scene.
Yeah, we're going to get to that.
Yeah.
Saito wakes up, draws a gun on Arthur, but Cobb leaps out of the bathtub, knocks Saito out. When he comes to, we discover the 4 guys in the hotel room. That's a dream. Okay? So now we're in a dream within a dream. So the old Japanese palace, that was a dream within a dream. Now we're in the first level of the dream, even though we didn't even know it. Actually, the 4 of them, Cobb, Arthur, Saito, and Nash, are all asleep on a train. And there's a 5th guy monitoring them. And they're all hooked up, again, they're hooked up to this suitcase with wires. So they're all having this shared dream. At a predetermined time, the 5th guy turns on some music in Nash's headphones so that in the apartment room dream, he hears the music. Now, we get this a few times during the movie. It's always the same song. It's Edith Piaf singing in French. I can't remember the name of the song. It's a beautiful song. And what it means is that in a certain amount of time, in say 10 seconds or a minute or whatever, I'm going to start waking people up. So it's just an audio cue to let people know you got to hurry up. And so in the dream, they hurry up. Cobb throws Saito to the ground. He puts his gun right to his head. He says, "You need to tell me all this stuff that's redacted. I need to know it now." But this backfires because Saito, this is his apartment. He's supposed to think that this is reality. He's not dreaming anymore because the dream was the Japanese palace. And now he's in his apartment room. But the person who created this dream is Nash. He's the architect of the dream, but he creates it through stuff that Saito knows. And Saito knows that the carpet that he's laying on is like, I can't even remember what it was, like a bearskin rug or something. But in the dream, it's polyester. It's not real because Nash didn't know any better. But Saito does, so he immediately realizes that he's still dreaming, which I thought was really, really cool. Meanwhile, an alarm goes off just then, and Arthur disappears from the dream. He wakes up on the train. Same thing with Nash. The door breaks down. The revolutionaries run in, grab Nash, and drag him out. And as soon as they do this, he wakes up on the train. And no sooner than that, Cobb wakes up on the train. All of them, they get up, they disconnect themselves, they grab their little suitcase, they leave Saito sleeping there, and run off their own way. They're all pissed off at Nash for screwing up the whole thing with the carpet. So this was the introductory sequence. This whole thing was 15 minutes long. That's it. And by the end of this, I was so completely hooked. I thought, at this point, I'm thinking this is one of the greatest movies I've ever seen in my life, right? And I think of some of the great introductory scenes. The first one that immediately comes to mind is Indiana Jones. You know, he goes into the cave, he steals the idol. Mm. I would put this up with that. I mean, it's the great introductory scene.
Totally agree. Yeah. From the very first frame, when he wakes up in the ocean, and
yeah.
I don't know what it is about it. I rewatched it, and when I go, oh God, this is such a good movie.
So now we're in Paris at Dom's home. Dom sits on the couch and spins a top. The top that we saw at the very beginning with the old Japanese man had the top. He said he'd seen it before. And he's really tense, Dom. He's got a loaded gun to his own head. And he does not relax and put the gun down until the top stops spinning and topples over. So what the hell does that mean? At this point, we have no idea. But I would like to say that because I have this theory and I believe the whole thing was sort of performative, I think it was Christopher Nolan kind of lying to us. I think all of the stuff with the top is sort of Christopher Nolan lying to us, but I'll get to that later. So now the phone rings, and it's Dom's children. He has the 2 little kids that we saw at the very beginning playing at the beach. Well, now we see the exact same thing, the exact same way. They're playing with their backs to the camera in the exact same positions, only now they're like in a backyard somewhere. We see this in little snippets while he's talking to them on the phone. And the kids are saying things like, when are you coming home? And he's like, I can't for a while. I'm away working. And the little girl, Philippa, replies, Grandma says you're never coming back. And the little boy, James, says, is Mommy with you? And Cobb's like, we talked about this. Mommy's not here anymore. So it's just more of a mystery. But like we've already talked about, they're humanizing Cobb. Because JD mentioned, Cobb's not a good guy. He's a thief. He's done all sorts of horrible things. But you have to care about him because he's your protagonist. And I think they do a great job of getting you to care about him, especially because you realize at this point, or very shortly after you realize, all he wants to do is get back and be reunited with his two little children. That makes you immediately care for him. There's this book, this great, very famous screenwriting book. It's called Save the Cat. And I want to say our friend Frank, who is a professional film editor who really needs to be on the show because he would be great. He's just a fun guy and he knows a lot about movies. I want to say many years ago, he bought me that book for my birthday, though I could be mistaken. It might have been somebody else. I apologize if it was. And the gist of it is, when you want to be sympathetic to your main character or any character in a movie, you give that person a save the cat moment because everybody loves you if you save a cat or if you save a dog or if you do something really nice to a pet or to a small child. And that's what they do in this with the children. Meanwhile, Arthur is worried that Mal showed up in that last dream, right? He's like, what's going on? Why was she there? Cobb just shuts him down. He says, don't worry about it. I'm taking care of it. We still don't know what's going on with that. They have helicopter transport to another country on the roof. But when they get up to the roof, what they find in the helicopter is Saito. And he's got Nash with him. And Nash has been beaten up. And he says Nash betrayed them. So Nash knew that the people who hired their group to steal from Saito were going to kill them because they failed. So Nash goes to Saito and gives up Dom and Arthur to hopefully save his life. But Saito doesn't fall for it. He gives Cobb a gun and says, you can take care of him yourself if you want. And Cobb says, oh, no, I don't do this stuff, that kind of stuff. He shot people. He had no problem shooting people in the dream because it's just a dream. But he's not going to shoot anybody in real life. Just another way to show that he actually is a good guy, right? He's not going to kill people. So Nash is dragged away. Arthur and Cobb get into the helicopter. And Saito explains that he wants to hire them to do a job. Saito has heard of something called Inception. So instead of going into a dream and extracting information, basically what you're doing in the dream instead is implanting an idea into somebody's mind so that person will do something you want him to do, or maybe not do something you don't want him to do. And Arthur explains, that's impossible. It's impossible. You can't do it. But Cobb is like, well, it is possible. I know it's possible. You don't know how he knows this. But he says, I will not do it. That is something I put my foot down on. Don't do Inception. So Saito says to Cobb, look, if you do this job, I will make it possible for you to go back to America, something that Cobb's not able to do, although we don't know why. I will make it so that you can go back to America and be reunited with your children. And Saito promises he can do this for Cobb. He asks Cobb, he says, hey, do you want to take a leap of faith or become an old man filled with regret waiting to die alone? Which was a cool line that was repeated a couple of times through the movie. I don't think Christopher Nolan gets much for his dialogue. He's more story-driven than dialogue-driven, but there were a couple of really cool lines in this, that being one of them. So against Arthur's wishes, Cobb agrees to this. And Saito says, fine, assemble your team, but choose more wisely than this Nash guy. So he starts assembling his team again. And he begins by visiting his father-in-law. So this is Mal's father. It's Michael Caine, who is a college professor. And it turns out that it was Michael Caine who originally taught Cobb how to navigate people's dreams to begin with. Since his architect, the guy who creates his dreams, is Nash, and he's gone now, Cobb needs a new architect. And Michael Caine says, why don't you just do it yourself? But Cobb says, Mal won't let me, which is another cryptic line. Why won't his wife let him create dreams? To which Michael Caine's reply is very interesting. He says, come back to reality, Dom. So again, I don't know that at this point you even think about those things, what's reality and what's a dream. But now Michael Caine is kind of casting doubt on what's reality and what's a dream. I think that's interesting.
Watching it again and saying, are these clues or are they misdirections? So I kept going back and forth. So now, years later, watching it, I still feel that way. I still don't know. That's the beauty of the movie. I think that's what's going to keep it a classic for a long time because it just changes over time, and you change and it changes for you.
Dom explains that success in this job means that his charges, we don't know what the charges are, but his charges will be dropped and he'll be able to go home to see his kids. And this sways Michael Caine. So he reluctantly agrees and suggests his grad student Ariadne, played by Ellen Page, the former Ellen Page, now she's Elliot Page. They go to Ariadne and recruit her. And as Cobb and Arthur teach Ariadne the basics of building dreams, we get them as well. As they're explained to her, we're getting it too. And one of those being something we sort of knew, but it's made more specific. 5 minutes in the real world is an entire hour in the dream world. And I think one of the knocks on Inception, aside from it being too difficult to understand, which I don't think is a knock because I didn't have a problem understanding it, but one of the bigger knocks is there's just so much exposition. They call it exposition dumping, which is where a character is just talking to somebody else and explaining something. And these can be big chunks. And you need it in this movie because there's just so much that needs to be explained. But I think Christopher Nolan does an amazing job with all this. Because, yeah, you've got Dom explaining things to Ariadne, but while he's doing this, you've got things like the cafe scene where everything's blowing up on the street in the cafe. You've got things like he's explaining how the world works, and she's folding over the city so that the buildings become the sky and they attach to the ground so you can walk up the sides and upside down and stuff. I mean, you get all these amazing visual things while he's explaining it to you. You're seeing it, the explanations in real time. I think he did a great job with this. I think it was wonderful storytelling. I absolutely don't take points off for exposition dumping in this movie. Also, you find out about how the people that are in the dreams are projections of whoever the dreamer is, people from your subconscious. That's who you, which is what you would do in real life if you were having a dream. They're all little pieces of you as other people around you, which is interesting. And it's explained that if things get weird in a dream, these projections are going to know, and they're going to try to seek out who the dreamer is if it's not if it's not you. You're sharing a dream with a bunch of other people, but you're not necessarily the dreamer. Anyway, Ariadne turns out to be even better than Dom could have ever hoped, and she starts understanding things that he might not want her to understand, and she understands that Dom can no longer build dreams himself. He tells her that it's because of his wife, and when he does that, his wife shows up out of nowhere and stabs her to death right as they're sitting next to each other. But it's just a dream, and she wakes up, which was just a cool looking scene. This is when we learn about totems. So Cobb's totem is the little metal top that you've seen a couple of times that he spins, and he's worried about if it's going to stop or not. Arthur's totem is a loaded die, and Ariadne makes a weighted chess piece for herself. It's a secret thing that you have for yourself that no one else can see. Well, people can know about it, but they can't touch it. And that way, only you know how it's actually going to act in real life and how it's going to act in a dream. So you know, by the way it acts, if you're dreaming or if you're awake. That's something that's really important. But again, with Cobb's totem, I'm going to explain later that the whole thing's a big lie by Christopher Nolan, an interesting thing. And if you look at it, and if you understand it, and I'm going to explain it later, you'll know exactly when Cobb is awake or when he's dreaming. So you'll know pretty much everything is going to be explained by the end of this. So the next thing is Cobb goes to Mombasa to recruit Eames. Eames is a forger and a thief. Eames is Tom Hardy. Tom Hardy, great actor, who has been in Christopher Nolan movies. Well, after this, he was in the last Dark Knight movie as the bad guy. Now, Cobb has enemies in Mombasa. So this huge chase ensues, and he has to escape from his enemies. And I've heard that this sequence is why a lot of people say that you can't tell if he's dreaming or if he's awake. He's supposed to be awake because he's recruiting a member of his team that he needs. But the chase sequence is very dreamlike. Especially people like to talk about, there's this one scene where he is running in an alleyway and the walls in the alley are getting tighter and tighter and tighter, and he's just able to squeeze out. And as soon as he does that, just crazy random things happen. Saito shows up out of nowhere and picks him up in a car, and they're able to escape. Just things like that may have been a dream, but there's just making it, blurring the lines between dreams and reality. But it was a really cool scene with also great music back to it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, the scene with the wall, because that to me was confusing or engaging in the game. Because it's plausible that there's a little alley like that, but also extremely dreamlike.
Yeah, I mean, Is it BS? Is it dream logic? Is it coincidence? Is it just cool for cool movie's sake? Not exactly sure. But by the end, I will tell you if I think he was awake or dreaming in that scene. Meanwhile, while Cobb is in Mombasa, Arthur is continuing to teach Ariadne. It's at this point we learn about Mal, because Arthur explains to Ariadne, Mal isn't just gone, she's dead. So Cobb's dreams of her are exactly that. They're dreams of his dead wife, and he can't seem to help when he's dreaming. She just shows up from his subconscious, which I think is really cool. We still want to know what's going on. How did she die? All that kind of stuff. But we're getting it piece by piece. Eames introduces Cobb and Saito to a chemist that he knows. This is Dilip Rao. He's just called the chemist, so he doesn't have an actual name in the movie. So I'm just going to call him the chemist. And he makes special sedatives for them for their mission. And as you'll find out, for the particular mission they're doing, they need substances that do specific things they can't necessarily get. We find out at this point what the actual mission is. It's a little confusing, so we're going to follow along. But here's what's going on. Saito owns an energy company, and his biggest rival is a guy named Maurice Fisher, played by Pete Postlethwaite. Now, Maurice Fisher is old and sickly, and he is just about to die. His son, Robert Fisher, played by Cillian Murphy, is going to inherit the entire company. Now, Saito wants Cobb to implant the idea into Robert, the son's head, that he should break up his company. And if he breaks up his company, that's going to help Saito, because now Saito will have the biggest energy company. But things get a little bit more complex. So the plan is for Eames, who I mentioned before, he's a forger, but in this case, forging means forging identities. Like he disguises himself as other people in dreams. He's going to disguise himself as Maurice's right-hand man, a guy named Peter Browning, who is also Robert's godfather, so his Uncle Peter, somebody that Robert really trusts. This is a guy played by Tom Berenger. Eames, as Peter, is going to give the idea to Robert in the first layer of a dream, but Robert is going to think that that's reality, that he's not dreaming, okay? So he's going to give him this idea in what he thinks is reality, and they're going to go into a second level of dream, and he expects that his Peter projection is just going to feed him this information right back to him. So in a dream, he's technically going to be coming up with the idea on his own, if that makes any sense. It gets a little confusing. Yeah.
When I'm watching it, I'm not confused. I'm just following right along. It's complex, but it's not confusing. But if you try to describe it, when you did that, I got confused for the first time.
I totally agree. When I was watching it, I didn't have any problem. But as I'm writing this, I'm like, wow, that is kind of confusing, isn't it? So this dream that they need to create is going to be 3 levels deep. And so the chemist needs to devise a drug that's going to keep them under and not allow them to wake up. If something should happen, they can't just wake up in the middle of it. That'll screw everything up. They need to be asleep for a full 10 hours is how long they think it's going to take them to do this. And because of the drugs that he creates, it accelerates brain function, which speeds up time in the different dreams. So get this. They want to do this in 10 hours of reality. 10 hours of reality is a week at the first level of a dream. At the second level, it's 6 months. And at the third level, it's 10 years of dream time. So they don't want to be at the third level for very long, I'll tell you that. Fisher needs to take a 10-hour flight from Sydney, Australia. The father, Maurice Fisher, is in Sydney, Australia. This is where he's going to die, and when he dies, the body needs to be transported back to L.A. So it's a 10-hour flight. So that's what they prepare to do. They're going to wait till the guy dies. They're going to get on the same flight with Robert Fisher and the dead body and all fly back to America at the same time. And the only way that they're able to do this without any problems is that Saito buys the airline to make sure that they have full access to the plane. All the passengers, will just be him, his crew, and the flight crew are his people so that nothing goes wrong. And this is exactly what happens. Maurice dies in Sydney. Everyone flies out there. They all get onto the same plane. They are flying back to Los Angeles. Everything's going very smoothly. Fisher's drink is spiked, so it knocks him out. They all hook up with the briefcase. They're all having this big shared dream. Believe it or not, this is basically the climax. We're not even halfway through the movie, but the climax is going to be the entire second half of the movie. It gets really intense. It just never stops. It's action-packed. It's just great. Everything about this movie is great. We start with the first level of the dream, which is a rainy Los Angeles city street. And why is it rainy? Even though Ariadne's doing all the architecture, she's creating all these dreams, but she's creating them in somebody else's dream. It's the chemist who's actually dreaming, and apparently he needed to pee before he fell asleep and he didn't, so it's raining terribly there. Arthur and Saito steal a cab, and they pick up Robert Fisher on a street corner. Eames jumps in next to Fisher, and Fisher's protesting, hey, I had the cab first, blah, blah, blah. But Saito's in the front seat. He pulls a gun on him. Fisher, it's kind of strange. He takes it in stride. He just thinks he's being mugged or whatever. But it turns out, unbeknownst to Cobb and the entire group, that Fisher has actually had this dream defense training that we've talked about. And suddenly, everyone on the street, everyone in the cars, everyone is against them. They all pull out weapons, and they're all trying to free Robert Fisher. In fact, a train comes out of nowhere and starts coming right down the street, knocking cars left and right. So they have to defend themselves against these projections of Robert Fisher.
How it starts with the rain and then immediately they get run over by a train. That's awesome. But to me, that signified Mal's presence because in one of the scenes, we see a train and it's associated with Mel. When the architect's, she's sneaking around and she sees what's going on. And she does see a train go by at one point. And then it's a similar train that plows into their car.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
But you're right.
Yes.
We find this out much later. But when Mal and Cobb get stuck in limbo, they're there for like 50 years or something crazy like that. And they realize the only way that they can get out is by committing suicide. And what they do is they lay on the train track and let the train kill them. So that's where you're getting the train from.
Yeah, no, also it's a brief flash of it when the architect, she goes down the elevator and she sees a train just zoom by as she's going down to the second level or the lower level. And you go, what the hell is that? And it was one of the old-timey kind of trains, and it's the same one that plows through the car at that time. And I go, oh, I think it's his wife is showing up. That's what I felt at that point.
Meanwhile, they are able to get away, but Saito is shot in the chest. And he doesn't die, and he's not going to die because he's under deep sedation. Because, like, if you die, you wake up. So if he dies, because the sedatives are too strong, he goes into limbo. They call it raw, unconstructed subconscious. And the worst part is that for 10 hours of dreaming, it would be a literal eternity. Or as Eames says, you'll be down there until your brains turn to scrambled eggs. Now, one of these people has actually already been down there, and that was Cobb. He and Mal had been experimenting with that sort of thing, and one time they got trapped down there. And the problem was that Mal decided to believe that the dream was reality because they were down there for so long. It was a coping device to help her survive down there. And when she finally awoke, she couldn't get it out of her mind that she was still dreaming. And so the only way to get out of a dream that she knew is to kill yourself, to wake yourself up, only she was awake. and that's why she ended up committing suicide. So you get the full backstory. Well, not all of it, actually, but you get most of it at this point. Mal commits suicide because they had been down in limbo for such a long time that it screwed up her mind. Meanwhile, they have successfully kidnapped Robert Fisher, and Eames steals his wallet. And inside the wallet, you find a photo of Robert Fisher as a child with his father, Maurice, and he's blowing this big paper pinwheel. And we know that we've seen this photo before. He had placed it next to his father's bedside when his father was dying, and his father never even noticed it. His father didn't care about it. In fact, one time he actually knocks it right off and breaks the frame while he's flailing around one day. But Eames takes it because he thinks it might be useful, and of course it is. Cobb and Arthur, masked, pretend to be kidnappers, and they demand the combination to Maurice's safe, which there might not even be a safe. Robert doesn't know the combination. Robert doesn't even know that there's a safe, but they tell him that they know there's a safe, and they know that he knows the combination of the safe because somebody told them. And who is that somebody? It's his Uncle Peter. So they bring in a beaten up and tortured Uncle Peter, Tom Berenger, but it's actually Eames, because this is a dream, and Eames is forging himself as Uncle Peter. So Peter Browning tries to get Robert to tell the combination. But again, they all know that there is no real combination. So what they do find out is that Robert and Maurice, the father and son, had a horrible relationship, right? When Robert's mother died when he was 11, Maurice's response was, well, I guess there's not much more to say about that. And according to Robert, they have had no meaningful moments together in their entire life. And the last thing that Maurice said to Robert before he died, he could barely speak, but he was able to get one word out to his son, and it was disappointed. So Eames, as Uncle Peter, promises Robert that Maurice did love him, and that inside this safe is a second will, and the second will breaks up his empire, something that Maurice says was a gift to Robert. And Robert doesn't understand this. He doesn't understand how destroying his inheritance, I mean, this company is his inheritance, if it's broken up into pieces, that screws him over. But they don't have any more time because Fisher's militarized projections are closing in. So they demand at gunpoint that Robert Fisher just say the first 6 numbers that come to his mind. And he does. They all pile back into a van and get back out on the rainy street. The chemist is driving, and they're trying to evade all these cars that are after them. They're shooting at them. All this stuff's going on. And while the chemist is driving, all the rest of them hook up and go down into the next level of the dream.
And once again, you kind of subvert expectations by the plan is immediately ruined, right?
Yes.
Like they immediately, the first thing that happens, it goes wrong and just tense. I hadn't thought about it, Heath, until you introduced the whole second half is the climax of the movie. You're right. So it's actually a kind of a short and contained story.
And that's why at the end we were talking about how you feel just so completely drained because for an hour and a half you've just been on edge with this climax.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about it, but that's true.
So we go down to the second level of the dream, and now they're all in a hotel. Big, beautiful, nice, fancy hotel. Arthur is now the dreamer. Fisher is having a drink with a pretty girl, but it's actually Eames disguised as a pretty girl. And again, she steals his wallet, just like she stole his wallet on the first level of the dream. And she gives him a fake phone number and says, call me. But it turns out that there's only 6 numbers in the phone number, and it's the same, just random numbers he'd used as the combination for this safe. Now, Cobb pretends to be a guy named Mr. Charles, the head of Fisher's dream security team. This is a ploy that he and Arthur have used before in different jobs that they've done. He explains to Fisher that Fisher is dreaming. Somebody is trying to access his mind. And that he, Mr. Charles Cobb, is there to make sure that that doesn't happen. He's there to help him. But because he now realizes that he is dreaming, all the projections realize that it's somebody else's dream. So now all the projections, just like in the first level, all the projections are after them again. Meanwhile, while this is going on, the chemist is driving around in the dream above, and every time he goes around a turn really fast or jostles the van, you feel it inside this second level of the dream. Fisher starts trusting Cobb, Cobb gets Fisher to remember that he was kidnapped and that the kidnappers put him to sleep so that they could go into his dream and get this safe combination. So Cobb gets him to continue remembering what the numbers were that he gave him, and these numbers correspond to hotel room numbers. So they go to one of the hotel rooms, and Arthur and Ariadne are waiting inside. And that's when Robert's projection of his Uncle Peter comes in. In fact, Saito thought it was Eames pretending to be Uncle Peter again, but it wasn't. It was just a projection. Cobb uses this to sow doubts in Robert's mind. Cobb gets Robert to believe that Peter is lying. And the only way that he can understand or find out what he's lying about is to go into Peter's subconscious, to go into Peter's dream and extract the information. So they all prepare to go down into the third level of the dream, except Arthur. Arthur's going to wait and monitor them while the rest of them are going to go down into this third level.
When you explain it, it sounds more confusing than it plays out in the movie. Who do I believe? What do I believe? Where am I? What's going on?
Yeah, it's weird how, as I'm doing this, it's so much more than when you're actually watching it. Again, it seemed to make complete sense.
Not confusing at all. Like you said, it flowed well, and the gravity stuff and the tilting of the room when they were talking, and then listening to that again, the sound, listening with my headphones. I thought there was something going on in my house. I looked around and go, is that the movie, or is that, is there a launch today? I felt it. And as they were turning, I felt like I was turning. Really well done.
So we drop down into the third level of the dream. The third level is this big snowy mountain fortress. And Robert Fisher is the dreamer, which is somewhat ironic because Fisher is helping them break into his own subconscious. He wants to break into his Uncle Peter's dream. He doesn't realize that he is his Uncle Peter. It's just a dream that he's having. Meanwhile, the chemist gets into trouble driving, and he accidentally runs off the road, and it flips the van a bunch of times over an embankment, which miraculously lands right side up and then just keeps driving. But while this is going on, while the van is flipping and turning around, the gravity inside the second level. Now, everybody's already gone to the third level except for Arthur. He's fighting these projections that are after them, and he needs to keep them off of the people who are sleeping. And that's when, we've mentioned it a couple times, one of the greatest fight scenes ever. The van is rolling around, and we see that as the hallway from the hotel rolling around, as well as they also built an entire hotel room. So these two different rooms they're having fights in, and they built an entire set that they were able to roll around like a hamster wheel. And these poor actors, well, an actor and a couple of stuntmen are inside it. I tell you, I want to make movies, and I want to act in movies, and these are the sorts of things that I want to be in. Something like this, that would just make me so happy. One of the greatest filmed scenes, fight scenes, I think any kind of scene. I mean, yes, it's a fight scene, it's a great fight scene, but any kind of scene, this was great.
Totally. And I can't believe that at the time, what would you say, it was $100 and something million budget, but at the time,
130, which is cheap now.
But then it was insane. And, I wonder just how much went into building these sets. Totally, they made their money back. It was a great investment, but you think about the cost, and then how good of a pitch man are you to give somebody to let you spend that much money to bring your vision to life?
If you storyboard that, or like make it into like a comic book, and you show somebody, who wouldn't get excited to invest money in something like that?
Me. I would never invest in a movie. I'd be like, yeah, that's a great vision, but no way.
I mean, I imagine these guys, they see dollar signs and the investment portion, but I'm sure they were thinking, oh, this is kind of like the Matrix. And that made a gajillion dollars. Let's do it, right?
Oh,
I was
totally.
Thinking, you're inside a dream in the Matrix also, right? They always pitch it like it's the Matrix with Indiana Jones, and you mash them together and you get this great movie, right? The spinning thing, remember in 2001, was it Space Odyssey? They actually built a set that rotated that the guy could run on. It looked like he was actually running up the wall. You see it all, but it's all together and it's new and it's mashed up and it's different. And so well done. The fight scene is just, I want to see it in the big theater again, just so I can see that fight scene.
Absolutely. And the stunt people who did the work in it, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I mean, I can't even imagine what it would take to do that kind of stunt work on a set that's rotating like that and being able to do the same thing take after take, you know? It's tremendous. And again, it was shot beautifully. It looked great. For that scene alone, Christopher Nolan should have won an Oscar for Best Directing. I assume because of the way they had the set and the constraints of how they were able to shoot it in only certain angles, maybe that's why they didn't use those big IMAX cameras. But I mean, it would have been so amazing in IMAX. But whatever. Meanwhile, Cobb decides that he wants to stay out of the next part because he's already saying in the hotel level, he saw his children playing, right? And now in this snowy level, he sees his children playing in the snow. So he knows that he can't control his subconscious. He wants to stay as far away from things as possible because if he gets too close, maybe Mal can show up just like she did at the beginning and screw things up. So what they decide to do is have Eames ski down and distract all the guards that are on this fortress. Then Saito is going to take Robert Fisher into the fortress to what is going to be this big vault that he's going to open with the combination, those 6 numbers that he just made up at random. But now through a couple of different layers of dream, they have acquired quite a bit of significance. Meanwhile, Saito is bleeding. Now, he was only shot on the first level. He wasn't shot on the second level, and he wasn't shot on the third level, but the injury is bleeding through to the different levels. He's in much worse shape on the second level, and he's already starting to get bad on the third level. And he can't have him die because if he does, we already know he goes into limbo, and that would just ruin everything, especially for Dom, because if he wakes up and his brain is gone, he can't call and get the charges dropped. As soon as Dom gets into America, he's going to be arrested. So this big, huge fortress, it represents Peter Browning's mind. And Cobb explains to Fisher that he's got to break into it on his own. It's important for him to do this. So Eames sends up some flares. All the guards see the flares. They come running out to chase him. There's this big sort of snowy ski chase. It was reminiscent of James Bond's On Her Majesty's Secret Service, if you've ever seen that one. Christopher Nolan has said this. He said that that's where he got the inspiration for the big ski chase scene. Unfortunately, at this point, the chemist gets stuck on the bridge. The bridge goes up and he's on it, and he can't get down because at the other side, there's a big row of cars, and they have machine guns, and they're firing at him. So the chemist panics, and he puts the headphones on Arthur, and he starts playing the music, even though maybe it's a little bit too soon. And Arthur understands what the music means immediately. He knows they don't have enough time. And the people on the third level, they also discover this. They hear the music too, and they don't have enough time. So they need to hurry. What the chemist does is he drives right over the rail, just smashes into the rail and flips over the bridge. It only takes maybe 15 seconds for the van to fall off the bridge, but in the other levels, it's taking, hours and hours, or even in the third level, it's taking like a week. The van slams through the barrier, falls toward the water, and on the second level, now Arthur is completely weightless because the van is literally flying through the air. And Arthur floats back to his room, and all the people in it are just floating in there, and he doesn't know what to do. So he grabs them all, and he takes lamp cords and things, and he ties them all up into a big bundle, and he pushes them into the elevator. And then he gets into the elevator shaft, and he starts putting a bunch of charges, a bunch of bombs on one side of the shaft of the elevator, so that when he lights them all, when they explode, it'll push the elevator car down the shaft, which will create gravity. On the third level, the snowy mountain, it creates this huge avalanche. Robert and Saito are just able to get away from the avalanche and get to the fortress. However, something's gone wrong because the soldiers stop chasing Eames and they all head back to the fortress to go after Fisher. Arthur, meanwhile, is in the elevator car with all the group that's all tied up, and he notices that Saito is bleeding really badly and that he's near death on this level. And on the third level, Saito can no longer go on. They get inside the fortress, but he collapses on the ground. So Fisher comes to the vault all alone. The vault is basically Peter Browning's mind. He needs to go in there to find out how Peter Browning is lying, what is really going on. Cobb gets really close to the building. He's got a sniper rifle, and he's shooting the last of the security guards just to keep them off of Fisher, because they've all left Eames, and they're all running at Fisher for whatever reason. And that's when somebody comes up behind Fisher, and we realize that it's Maul. And Cobb freezes. He can't shoot her. He can't shoot his wife. And Ariadne is next to him, and she's pleading, shoot her. It's just a dream. Just shoot her. But he knows that the dream Maul is all that there really is. There is no real Maul. So if he shoots kills the dream Maul, then maybe she's gone forever. I don't know. But he won't shoot her. And she pulls out a gun, and she kills Robert Fisher. And that sort of frees him. He shoots her in the shoulder, and she falls down. Eames gets to Fisher just as Cobb and Ariadne arrive, but he's dead. Saito's near dead. He's laying on the ground. He can't even move. Fisher's dead. So it's over. They failed. They're standing right in front of the vault. The vault would have been the end, and they failed. Eames is like, well, I mean, we'll just start setting up explosives, and we'll just start waking ourselves up because there's no reason not to, because it's all over. But Ariadne comes up with the idea that obviously Fisher isn't dead. He can't be woken up. He's just gone down to the next level. He's gone down to the limbo level. And if they go down there after him, they'll have all the time in the world, because this is a really spread out time. They can find him, bring him back up to this third level so that he can go back into the vault. So that's the plan they decide. But they're worried because if you go down into limbo, if you're stuck there for too long, it can screw up your brain.
It just occurred to me, you don't know how long they looked for Fisher. They could have been down there 5 months
Years.
looking for him.
Yeah.
Finally find him with Mal and some obscure apartment. And so they don't really make that clear, but they allude to, you could be down there for a long time. So,
yeah. The third level is 10 years. The fourth level is literal eternity.
Yikes.
So Cobb and Ariadne go down to this fourth level, except Fisher's already there because he's dead on the levels above. And Saito's also there because he dies. Meanwhile, everybody's got charges set up so that when the time comes, they can be woken up on the different levels. Cobb and Ariadne come to in the fourth level on the surf, basically where Cobb was at the very, very beginning of the movie. And you see behind him on the surf are all these buildings that are all just like in tatters. Like it looks like an apocalypse city, just a crumbling line of buildings. And the remains of, you find out, the world that Cobb and Mal built when they were down there. They were down there for decades. And eventually, Cobb confronts Mal. Cobb knows that Mal has gotten Fisher because she's down there, she's in control of this level, and she wants Cobb, and Cobb wants Fisher. So she knows if she has him, he's going to come looking for her. And he does, of course. They go to a place where they lived while they were down there. She's waiting for him. And she makes all these really strong arguments to make Cobb believe that what he thinks is his actual life is just a dream. Because that's what she believed, that the real world wasn't real. It was just a dream. She killed herself, and now she's here. She's alive. This is reality. She's here. The kids are there. You can see the kids. They're playing that same snippet where they're playing with their backs to them. And she says to him, if you kill yourself, you can join me here. You can be with your kids. Stop living in that fantasy world. Same thing that her father-in-law said to him. Come back to reality, Dom. It's like, where is he? What's going on? You don't know. But he knows that this isn't real.
Well, I mean, she is a really good point, though. In part of our conversation, she goes, think about it. Does it make any sense that you spend your life running from shadowy corporations that are trying to kill you for stealing information, and you're this big spy and you can't go back? None of that makes any sense. Come back to your family here. That was a fun point.
Were you swayed?
No, but I was engaged because again,
Yeah.
I'm both taking in the movie and playing it at the same time, and I thought that was really clever. Another little kind of twist of wait a second, she has a point. And there was that scene again back when they're running through that Turkish city or whatever, and the walls were
Yeah.
like some of the stuff that's supposed to be reality doesn't quite make sense. I can't wait to hear your overall theory here in a minute.
Anyway, Cobb explains, though, how he feels about it. And he explains also that it was he that implanted the idea into her mind of how to awake from limbo, that it wasn't reality, and that was the original Inception that caused her to go crazy in reality and kill herself eventually. So he feels just this horrible guilt. But in the end, he knows what's reality. The way he explains it is that he knows that she's not real because he knew what she was like when she was real. And she's just his dream image of her. It's really sad. It was probably the most powerful point in the movie as far as emotional connection. And I think we talked about acting a little bit, and I loved all the acting. I thought all the acting was great. But I thought the one character who was given like a real emotional arc, who turned in the best performance, even though she was in it probably the least, was Marion Cotillard. I thought she was really good. She would get angry at times. She would be sad at times. She was all the different layers that he was giving her as this dream that he wanted to keep alive. It was very cool, and she was really good at it.
I remembered that scene as being the most emotional, and her performance, of course. And I also realized that the emotions were his emotions going through her. If it's his projection, right? It was everything, both of them together at the same time. The movie kind of evolves as you watch it multiple times. I agree with you. Her performance was, I thought, the most intense, emotional of the movie.
What you're saying, Rob, is absolutely right. It's him. He still refuses to let go for whatever reason of her, because he feels guilty or because he misses her or for whatever reason. So he does a ploy, I guess, to trick himself. He says, look, Mal, I will stay with you here forever if you give up Robert Fisher. And Ariadne's like, what are you talking about? No, no, no. But she's like, yes, of course I will do that. So Fisher's on the balcony. Ariadne runs off to him. He's sitting there tied up. And what does she do? She kicks him off the balcony, which of course kills him and wakes him up on the level above. But we find out that Cobb is not actually planning to stay with Mal. He knows that Saito is also dead, and they need to find Saito down here. So he tells his wife, just like I said, she's not real. She's just his memory that's been lasting all these years. And this pisses Mal off. So she tries to stab him, but in the end, Ariadne shoots her dead. Meanwhile, Fisher, like I said, gets pushed off the balcony. He wakes up on the third level. And it's kind of cool because Eames, Tom Hardy, is kind of using a defibrillator on him to try to wake him up. It's sort of, it didn't necessarily make sense. I didn't think it was necessarily needed because he was going to wake up anyways, but it kind of makes it seem more realistic in the dream. Fisher wakes up. He gets up. He goes to the vault. They know there's not much time left. It's getting really tense. Everybody's ready, waiting for the van, which is falling into the river. As soon as it hits the river, shit's going to happen. People are going to start waking up on all these levels. There's nothing they can do about it. They know when it happens, when this jolt happens, they have to explode their charges. Because if they don't, then they're stuck asleep. They're not going to wake up, and they're going to be down there for like forever. So Robert goes to the vault, and he uses the code, those same 6 numbers, and he walks in. And inside the vault is his father's death room. His father's still alive now. We've seen him before in this room briefly. It was the scene where he knocks the photo over and destroys it. But he's dying. He can barely talk. And Robert comes in to see him, and he's repeating that word that he said, the last word that he said to his son before he died. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed. And Robert's like, I know you're disappointed that I couldn't be as great as you. And Marie says, no, I'm disappointed that you wanted to be like me. And he points over towards the safe that's next to the bed. And Robert's confused, but he goes over there and he opens the safe. Again, it's the same exact combination, those 6 numbers. And in the safe is the will, and he picks up the will. But again, Maurice is like, no, you're looking at the wrong thing. Underneath the will is the big pinwheel that he was blowing in the picture. So somehow in Robert's mind, through all of this, he gets the idea that his father really does love him. Despite all of this, he cherished that picture, the one picture of them together, blowing the pinwheel. And this will that breaks up the company, it's not that he wants to destroy his inheritance. He wants Robert to be his own man, to break up the company and build something on his own. And this is very meaningful and powerful to Robert. He starts crying. And so we realize that the Inception is successful. He's going to take this idea. He's going to break up his company. And that's when just all hell breaks loose. Things start blowing up. All the different levels of the dream start exploding. The van hits the water and people start waking up. On the second level, Arthur just blows the charges in the elevator, and the elevator starts shooting to the ground where it blows up, and they wake up. On the third level, Eames had set charges all over the snowy fortress. They're all waking up. Everybody's waking up. Everybody's in the van on the first level of the dream, waking up in the water, coming out of the water. The only people who aren't there are Cobb, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Saito, Ken Watanabe. Saito is dead from the first level. He is in limbo, and we get right back to the very, very beginning of the movie. Cobb wakes up on the beach. He's taken into the fortress. Saito's been there. We don't know how long he's been there, but he is an old, old, old man. It's been such a long time that he doesn't know what's real and what's not real, which is exactly what happened to Mal years before. So he doesn't know if he should try to use the gun that's there to kill himself and wake himself up, or if he's like, this will just kill me. But again, they use those lines from the beginning. Will you take a leap of faith with me, or will you end up an old man dying alone with regret? And he does. He takes the gun. All you see, actually, it's kind of cool. He picks up the gun, and as soon as he picks up the gun, you see DiCaprio wake up on the airplane. So you know this is, according to everything, this is reality. This is them being awake. I talked about it briefly before, but when you get to this point, as everybody's waking up on the plane, all these different things have happened. This climax that has lasted over an hour. There's so much action, so much intensity and emotion, especially with the Cobb and Mal sequences. You just feel so completely wrung out. And the music they play, I think, is just fabulous. So uplifting. It's uplifting. You feel so good for these people. They made it through all of this, despite all these obstacles. They're getting off the plane. Saito makes the phone call to help out Cobb. I don't think enough has been made about how Saito has this mental fortitude to live down in this limbo land for, in his mind, 100 years or more. And when he wakes up, he's still sane. I think everybody kind of forgets this, but it's so important, and it shows this thing about Saito as a character. He has, again, this amazing mental fortitude. And when Cobb gets to the guard at the airport, he looks at his passport and lets him on through. So you know that everything's been accomplished. It's all done. And then the very end, Michael Caine, the father-in-law, picks up Cobb at the airport and takes him home. They go to his house, and again you see the 2 children playing in the backyard, the exact same scene, that same exact snippet. You can't see their faces. They're playing in the exact same positions. He takes that top and he spins it. But instead of like before, he had the gun to his head. He's like, am I awake? Am I awake? What's going on? Instead of that, they hear the father. The father hears them. They turn around. You see their faces. They run into his arms. He doesn't even care about the top. And after that, the camera goes back to the top, and we see it spinning and spinning, and it just looks like it's going to wobble, and then it goes to black, and that's how the movie ends. So what do y'all think about that ending? What happened? Tell me about everything. What do you think about it?
Everything, yeah. Oh, no. So Robert goes into the vault, sees the father and the pinwheel. You get the Inception. You get it immediately. You see, he thinks this is his own doing, right? The pinwheel, that would get me. I mean, if I thought I had a bad relationship with my father and I found something that was meaningful to me, and I go, I never knew that, it definitely spark something in me, about my father, about my relationship, where I could go with that. So I really totally identified with that. I keep some of the kid stuff. I know you probably do, JD, too. And I could imagine some of the things that I have stored away in here, picking one of those things as a meaningful thing for me, and then one of my sons finding it later and seeing, oh, my dad held on to this. There was some kind of meaning. So, it totally jived with me, that whole scene. Even if it wasn't a dream, if it happened in real life, it would be believable. When I saw the pinwheel, like in the safe, I thought, Rosebud.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Sure.
Rosebud. The man I could have been, or the man I should be. And in this case, the man I should be. Because, his father said, don't be like me. So it's like a reprieve, because in that movie, he didn't get to be that man. Right?
Right.
That was his regret. Not Spoiler alert for that movie, Citizen Kane.
Nobody in the world has ever seen that movie, Rob. How could you do that?
It's only been 70 years. Come on. But great movie, yeah. But anyway, of course, the action, all of them waking up one by one and level by level, all the way to the end, and then Cobb getting all the way home. Of course, we could probably spend an hour talking about the very, very end here, where the top is spinning, because it ties everything together. This is what I felt. When he spins it and he looks at it for a second and then he gives it up. Either he gave it up because it's not real and he's just accepting it, or he just gave it up because he's done with that life. You know what I'm saying? I can't tell which one it is, but it's unsure. It's not clear. How about you, JD?
Well, the emotional release when he finally gets to see the kids' faces was very real and very impactful. The father scene also, agree with you there, Rob, that was all well done and authentic. The spinning top, to me, I took it this way, and Christopher Nolan confirmed this pretty explicitly, that's just meant to show that he doesn't care anymore, whether it's a dream or not. He's with his kids, and that's it. What's done is done. To me, the fun of playing the game of the movie, is it a dream or not? The fact that he would come back whatever amount of time later, even if it was just months, those are young children, and they're still exactly the same size, and they're still sitting in exactly the same position, it's got to be a dream. He is absolutely dreaming. Now, my question is, for how long has he been dreaming? How much of the whole movie was a dream? But for my 2 cents, it's a dream. He's still dreaming. The kids can't be that. It can't be that. Unless, again, it can be a storytelling trope or just a cinematic moment. I would buy that too if Christopher Nolan came out and said, no, it's a happy ending. He's back home. I'm fine with that. But my guess is that he's dreaming. I want to hear yours, Heath.
So the first thing I mentioned was that the totem, the top, was a huge lie, right? And let me explain what that means. The totem, the top, was not his totem. Not his totem. That was his wife's totem. The whole thing was, when she decided that reality wasn't real, that the dream was what was real to her, she took that top and she locked it away. And he went and got it. And he keeps it because it's part of her. I couldn't tell you exactly why he kept it. But every time he spins it to see if he's awake or not, again, it's a complete lie. He must have had his own totem when she had the top as her totem, right? Whenever in the past. He must have had his own totem, right? And he does. And the totem is, and you can watch this yourself. It's a long movie. We've just watched it a bunch of times. Now I'm going to make you watch the movie all the way through again. The totem is his wedding ring. His wedding ring. When she dies, he takes off the wedding ring because he's no longer married. But in every single dream sequence, every one, he's wearing that wedding ring. He's wearing the wedding ring because in the dreams, he's still married to her. She's still alive. He keeps, Rob mentioned it, he keeps this big house elevator with each level has different memories of her. We didn't really talk about that because while it's important to the story, it wasn't really important to the story. Other than that, that he's keeping all these memories of her. But every single time he's actually awake, there is no ring on his finger. No ring on his finger. You can watch every scene. The sequence in Mombasa, no ring on his finger. The sequence at the very, very end, when he spins the top and goes to see his children, no ring on his finger. So it's like he already knew he was awake because there was no ring on his finger. He didn't even need to spin the top, which every time he spins the top, like I said, it's a big lie. He spins the top, and I think you're exactly right, and I know Christopher Nolan has talked about that. It's not about the top anymore. It's about he wants to be with his kids. He doesn't care about that anymore. And I get that. I totally get that. But he doesn't need to anyway because he knows he's awake because no ring on his finger. And that kind of makes the whole movie just like, now you know. And again, I might be wrong because the biggest factor that I think that disproves that is exactly what you said. And I've been thinking about that for 15 years. The children didn't age. The children didn't age, and I don't know about the whole they were in the same position. He sees them in that same position every single time, so it's like, okay, it kind of makes sense that when he's reunited with them, like you said, it's a cinematic device. It's not necessarily made to be taken for real. But they didn't age. Unfortunately, you don't know how long it's been since the wife died. And I keep thinking, oh, it's years. But maybe it really was only a couple of weeks. We have no idea how long it's been.
Yeah.
So that was the one thing that really got me. It was like the kids didn't age, and if it's been years, they should have. But we don't know. All I do know is that there are times when he's wearing that wedding ring, and there are times when he is not wearing that wedding ring. And what it signified to me was this is when he's awake, this is when he's asleep.
Fascinating. The whole idea of pulling the top out of the safe, I did catch that at the time and then just got so caught up in everything else, I put it aside. And now that you
not
mentioned
only that,
I was like, that's her.
Not only that, but the only way it could work is if nobody touches it, nobody knows it. He immediately tells Ariadne, yeah, this is how it works. It only spins in, she's creating the dream. She could have made it spin forever or made it topple over. She's the one who's creating the different dreams. He gave it to Saito. Saito spins the top the very first scene in the movie. And you would never do that. You would never do that with your totem. It wouldn't work.
Well,
anymore.
but he was forcing them though, right? He was now the captor. That's how he wasn't giving him the top to spin. I don't know. I have to go watch it again now.
Yeah.
But rescuing it from the safe. Now in the moment, I'm thinking the top is proof that she's dreaming. She decided to stay in the dream, and that's why she locked the top away, right? Like that's the straightforward first level storyline to do with the top going into the safe. And he's going to extract it and show her, no, look, this is the dream. I've got the top back out of your safe, and I'm going to prove to you it's the dream. But you just threw a whole monkey wrench and everything. I have to go back and watch that. Again, I think the story is just fine. This is an extra layer. This is playing the movie. Whatever the outcome is, it doesn't matter to me, really. Like, again, I'll buy it. If I go back and watch that and I was like, oh, look, no, in the end, I'm pretty much now convinced that that's reality. And because of time differences and it's dream worlds, like that can explain away pretty much anything. Shit, this could all have happened in the blink of an eye. Now, my question for you is at the chemist's office where he comes out of the dream and he's watching the space and he sees Maul and he tries to spin the top and he can't spin it. And then we're off to the next scene. I was like, that's deliberately unresolved.
Well, like I said, I think Christopher Nolan screws with you a little bit in certain things. It's not really fair. It doesn't necessarily make sense. But a lot of that was just Christopher Nolan screwing with us so that we wouldn't figure it out.
Right.
I don't know if it's misdirection or if it's really true. Like, is it supposed to show you that he is in a dream, right?
You guys are both right. It could be. I think it's misdirection, but it absolutely could be.
Yeah, I have to watch it again. Such a good movie. And it was not that it was weird, but at the very end, when they wake up and Sandra makes the call. There's almost no dialogue for the rest of the movie.
But the music,
Yeah,
the music kicks in there, and it's such good. I love that particular part of the theme. It's like one piece, and you hear it over and over again, and each time you hear it, it gets louder and louder and more
louder.
powerful and more powerful. It builds to a crescendo. It's just, yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't fit. The ending doesn't fit when they do that, but this one did, because to me, I'm wondering what is reality, and then they don't explain anything at the end, and I'm like, that's fantastic. You know, it's up to me, and I don't feel bad about it because I still have a feeling that it is what it is. I feel that the big question, right? What is reality? Even just everything. I mean, I'm talking about now. A couple of years ago, my son, he asked me, said, Dad, what is all of this? And I go, what do you mean? He's all of this. Like, where are we? That's what he asked. And I go, you mean like in our house? He goes, no, where are we? Like, what is all of this? And I'm like, and I just went like, I don't have an answer for you. And I've been asking that question since I was probably your age, and no one has ever been able to tell me. So
You say, son, I have a movie you can watch. It's called Inception. And then after that, I'm going to introduce you to David Lynch. So,
which David Lynch movie?
oh my God, I don't even know. All of them.
No, I think you have to be 21 by law to watch any David Lynch movie.
By law. So it's a crime, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you watch.
You can show him Inception, you cannot show him David Lynch.
The very end just spoke to me about, reality and what does it really matter. It is here, we're here, right? Whatever reality this is. And they play with that in other movies too, Matrix, but also the one where he's in Mars. I forget, I'm drawing a blank right now.
Total Recall.
Total Recall, that's it.
Oh, yeah.
Total Recall, at the very, very end of the movie, you don't know that he's not still hooked up to the machine. That's another argument, right? They go, oh, he was definitely dreaming because X, Y, Z. That's what I felt at the very, very, very end. And that's what still stays with me. When I see it again, 10 years from now, hopefully, I'll have a different opinion. We'll
Yeah,
see.
it's a movie you can watch over and over again. We've seen it a bunch of times. All of us have seen it a bunch of times. And yet it still really pulls you in. I remember when I watched it the very first time, I didn't have a lot of the questions that I eventually had afterwards. I just kind of went with the story. I thought I understood everything as it was going. When I was writing everything down, it seemed to get a lot more confusing. But when I watched it the very first time, 15, 16 years ago, when it got to the end and he walks in to see his kids, I was sure he was awake. So there was no need to even spin the top because he's awake. This is the end of the movie. And then they show the top spinning, and it just starts to wobble before it went to black. And that wobble to me meant also that he was awake. Now, again, I've already explained how the top has absolutely nothing to do with it. But at the time, that's how I felt. And it kind of, like what you're saying, Rob, it made me feel confident about reality, at least in the movie, right?
Mhm.
Now, you're talking about with your son and all reality outside of the movie. Well, we could talk about that forever because I have ideas, and maybe we'll have to come up with some other movies that explore that, like you were saying with Total Recall, which is a great one. As cheesy as it is, after all these years, I still absolutely love that movie, despite Arnold Schwarzenegger and everything. I don't know if you guys saw, they made a remake of that with Colin Farrell, and it was just not good.
Nope.
The guy who wrote the book, it was Philip K. Dick, who also did Blade Runner and that kind of stuff. Just great ideas. He always had a lot of great ideas. However, you guys, do we have any final thoughts about Inception? So we can finally wrap this up.
2 thumbs up, either the first or second best in his entire collection, and one of the best movies of all time.
Agreed. One of the best. It's got so many nooks and crannies. I would see it again, and that makes a great movie. You want to see it again. It's going to work itself into the classics. I think it stays relevant.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about the rewatchability of movies. I mean, we've kind of glanced around it, but I think it's so important that if you're choosing greatest movies ever, it should be a movie that you want to watch over and over and over and over again. If at any point you no longer feel you want to watch this movie, how great could it be, right? And Inception is absolutely... Oh, you don't think so?
It's an intriguing question because there's movies like 2001. There are movies that I would say are great that I don't necessarily want to. I mean, I want to watch. I've watched them multiple times, but once every 10 years, not.
But that's okay.
And also, one of the movies I would rate very high on rewatchability is not one of my favorite movies of all time, but Fifth Element. You could watch any 5 minutes of Fifth Element at any time and enjoy it, but you don't even have to sit and watch the rest of the movie.
All I'm saying is that it should be one part of how you decide a movie is.
Yeah.
Because if you don't want to watch a movie again, how can you think it's that great? And I totally 100% agree with you when you talk about something like 2001. But it's a movie that even if I think, no, it's such a it's an investment, it's kind of slow, blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to feel like watching it eventually, and I'll watch it again. I know I will.
Yeah, sure. I wasn't disagreeing with you so much as engaging in the concept of, is that it is probably
I can't help it. I
factor,
must
right?
be right about everything. And I think Inception is one of the all-time greats. I have it. I believe it's 33 on my all-time list, which, I mean, you talk about top 10s and stuff, and obviously the top 10 is going to be just, but as far as I'm concerned, my top couple hundred are all the greatest movies ever. So if you get up to 33, you're saying something. There was so much to love about Inception. As I mentioned, it's a movie that can watch again and again, and I probably will. And I think that's going to do it for our scene-by-scene discussion about Inception. But now we really need to go because the next movie we want to watch is starting right now.